Okay, perfect. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. My name is Yasmin, and alongside my colleague, Joss Colchester, we're going to host and facilitate today's session. And the title of this event is Systems Transformation and Disruption in Education. The purpose of today's workshop is for us to collectively explore the ongoing process of disruption and transformation taking place in education, and use our collective intelligence to explore different perspectives on this. We are going to use the multi-level perspective tool today. We're going to go through all that in today's session, and that's going to be the main focus, okay? We have some resources there if you want to explore more about the London Hub, whom myself and Joss are part of. And we have here the article that this education challenge and all the sessions that we've been doing are based upon. So feel free to check them out. I think, yeah, you can now. Great. Feel free to check them out because they're very interesting resources, and you can use that afterwards in your own workshops, in your own sessions as well. Okay, so we have time here, so we're going to start with a brief introduction. That's this part. Then we're going to explain a bit about the board. And then the majority of today's session, we're going to just explore the different levels of this multi-level perspective tool that we have today in the context of the education system. Since we started a bit later, maybe we can skip the warm-up for today, but you can use the chat to let us know where you are based at the moment and your interest in participating in the session. So maybe you can just jump in and enjoy. So floor is yours, Joss.
Great, thanks a lot, Yasmin. Apologies for the delay getting started today, but great to see you all. Great to be here and explore this fascinating topic of how disruption and systems change is and will play out in the context of education currently, for the past number of decades, and going forward for the future. As mentioned, to do that, we're going to use this tool, this framework called the multi-level perspective, to try and co-create something of a story here. And we've already pre-populated this to some extent to be able to help build up a story, co-create the story with you. Let me just readjust this a little bit. Have it in place. Okay, it's moving around on this. So let me just drop that in there. So what is this? Maybe you're not familiar with multi-level perspective. It's a popular framework used for thinking about transitions and transformations in a wide variety of socio-technical systems or complex adaptive systems, and there are three different levels to it. You can see up here is what we call the macro level or the landscape level, this top level here, and it's really asking about what are those big changes going on out there in the world that are affecting this system, and we'll look at those now in a minute. There's a meso level, which is the current system, the current set of institutions, and the way this system works at the moment, and the way it might work in the future. So everything here is the system itself, the institutions and so forth, through which we do education. We'll look at that. Down at the bottom are the new innovations, the pockets of the future that are developing and potentially bubbling up and disrupting the incumbent system here. And may potentially, if they're successful and if they're developed, incubated, connected, nurtured, and so forth, may actually lead to a new paradigm, a new system over here on the right-hand side. So it's a great framework for getting that bigger picture of how this process may play out, and of course is playing out, this systems change. So it's really looking at that macro kind of change along those 3 dimensions. And we're going to walk through what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at this top level and some of the different dimensions there. And some of the research we already have from that paper on the left-hand side there, you'll find the link, have brought some of that in, brought some ideas and quotes from people out there thinking about this already. I'm just going to walk through that a little bit. We won't get through everything. There's quite a bit of content there, so you'll be able to explore this now and after the event today, as you wish. So this top section here is really the idea that systems exist within an environment. They exist within a context, and they have to, when that context changes, if it changes fundamentally, it's going to disrupt or challenge the incumbent system. And we've talked about this. This is obviously part of our education series challenge. We've had discussions in the past about some of those big changes. But here we're just going to look at them again to refresh our memory and to discuss that a little bit before we go down to filling in some of this. We'll go to breakout rooms down here talking about the new innovations and so forth. So in the paper you saw on the left there, we asked, what are those big landscape changes? What's going on out there in the world that's really driving disruption and change? And I'd love to hear your ideas, but these are 4 pulled out from the paper. So we've got globalization, and we'll look at these now a little bit more in a minute. We've got the rise of the innovation and knowledge economy, changes in values and expectations in the new generation entering the workforce. And yeah, exactly as Ali's doing there, you can grab it if you want to vote for one of these, if you think it's very important. Hopefully everyone's got the link already. We'll discuss them a little bit in a minute now. If you have others, what's missing here? Do you think there are other big macro changes that aren't encapsulated by this? And the other one, there's information technology in many shapes and forms that's been had a transformative effect in the world, and is certainly challenging the way we do education. So that's just some of them. I welcome you to post up some ideas there, but just to explore a little bit of what we have in the paper and try and build upon that. Information technology has changed our world in many different ways. Something like Wikipedia is quite a radical innovation in our world, that we could all have access, if we have internet, to a shared knowledge base that's co-created to some extent and globally available anytime, anywhere. An incredible wealth of knowledge is something quite powerful and disruptive. Of course, it has the internet and information revolution has had many other effects. But that's one, driving huge changes in every area of society and economy with massive consequences for education. Our education systems remain grounded in a model of communicating information from teachers to students in a world of scarcity of information. And we don't really live in that world of scarcity of information. Information technology has really changed that, and is really challenging the way we do education and creating whole new opportunities there. So it's just one dimension to that. We now live in a world where huge electronic digital networks link billions of people and their thoughts and their feelings in a way never seen before. Moreover, not just connecting their thoughts and feelings, but connecting them as individuals to hugely expanding volumes of data and information, to systems of sensors which are ubiquitously being placed around territorial globe, as well as GPS. And increasingly so to robots who are capable of understanding larger numbers of the tasks which previously only human beings could do. And very shortly, within our professional lifetimes, ubiquitously will be capable of some of the functions which we thought were which is special to and precious to our species. So we have kind of alluding to automation and the challenges that that's bringing, and in turn, it challenges kind of the whole question of who we are. And this is a great quote: learning how to be more human is the biggest challenge we face today, right? With the rise of automation, education should really be helping us respond to that and learn how to be human beings so that we can best adapt to and work with this massive proliferation of automation. So here actually are the windows of opportunity according to this framework, that these big macro changes here are actually going to create opportunities for something new in the system to emerge. If you have any ideas, I'm welcome to put them in there. For example, information technology, it allows things like what we're doing right now, to learn in this way, right? To connect into platforms and be able to share and co-create knowledge in this way. It's just one small example. What do you think? Do you have ideas on what the opportunities created by these big changes are? Here's another one down here, changing values and changing expectations from students and a whole new generation who have grown up with this technology and are used to information being everywhere and have a changing set of values. They've grown up in a world of, big macro challenges like climate change, and they're interested in those, and they're questioning how they might actually do something about that. And education might not just be for taking them into the economy and a job, but also for actually helping them address those challenges. That's another big macro change, opportunity. It can be seen in many different ways. Globalization and the rise of this massive middle class around the world that's placing larger and larger demands on education in India and China and so forth. So those are some of the big macro trends, and the innovation, the rise of the innovation knowledge economy. But now we really actually need people to think, and knowledge is no longer being thought of as stuff that is developed and stored in the minds of experts, represented in books and classified into disciplines. Instead, it's now thought of being like a form of energy, as a system of networks and flows, something that does things or makes things happen. Knowledge is defined and valued, not for what it is, but for what it can be. It is produced not by individual experts, but by collectivized intelligence, that is groups of people with complementary expertise who collaborate for specific purposes. These changes have major implications for our education system. So it's the idea that knowledge now is actually something increasingly valuable and something that could be applied almost faster and faster, new knowledge in an innovation economy. It's not something trapped in books and academia in the way that it was. So those are the big macro changes and transformations. Maybe I'll pass it over to Yasmin to say a bit about what's going on down here.
Yes, thank you, Joss. So yeah, here as Joss mentioned in the beginning, we're talking about the regime. And essentially, the regime is the current structures, the practice or the organization patterns that exist in the current systems that we see. And they are characterized by how the technologies or the social and cultural institutions fit and operate. And it's very important to understand that the regime exists because there is an underlying value model, an underlying paradigm, a way that we look at the world, that we experience the world. And those ideas are extremely interrelated and interdependent. Because we have this paradigm, these ideas support the maintenance and the ongoing existence of the regime that we witness. So in the context of the education system, we've identified here 5 main features that we can see are part of the paradigm that we see in the world today, and that corresponds to the way that our current education system is and operates. So I invite you to drag some dots here to the features that you identify as being, that you agree they are part of the paradigm that we live in at the moment, or if you agree with those, you can drag the dots here as well. So we have centralized, objective, formal, individualistic, and static. So do you agree some of these features are part of the paradigm that we witness nowadays? So you can drag the dots here, and in this box, you can identify some of the other features that are not identified here on this 5, and you can comment if you have any other ideas on different characteristics of the value models that we hold today that in a way supports the education system that we observe and experience. So feel free to put some stickies here and drag some dots so we can get some conversation going. And you can use the chat as well if you feel comfortable to do so.
Yeah, maybe just highlight a little bit of what we're talking about here. Centralized was one of the main ones, right? They're closed, centralized systems following the same principles of other institutions of the industrial age, where things are brought into the center and there's this kind of standardization and this, that kind of factory production process that happens. That's one of the main ones. And then the other one was individualistic. Learning is seen as something that each individual does, and the aim of the system is intelligent individuals rather than any form of collective intelligence. The system places the academically competent individual as the highest outcome over any form of personal development or collective capacity.
Yeah, I think a very important one here as well is this static nature of the paradigm that we definitely see in a lot of universities and schools all over the world. And I find it very, very, I don't know, maybe absurd sometimes that in such a dynamic world that we experience today, the internet, we can just access information everywhere. We're still doing the same things that we're doing maybe 50 years ago in the schools and universities. So I think a static feature of the paradigm that we have today, it's a very important one to consider.
But many of these are being challenged, aren't they? The very assumptions of this whole system. Our existing education system helped us in the past to simplify a complex process of learning within society and provide basic education to a mass society. That's where it came from, wasn't it? All these new people having to be educated, and we had to create a system, a mass system for that. And it hinged around a lot of these things, particularly standardization. But now with that, we're increasingly getting caught up in them. They're a hindrance to the kinds of outcomes that society needs and wants. And that's what we mean by systems change, changing these fundamental principles, the fundamental paradigm. So we're actually going to go into breakout rooms now for the next 10 minutes or so. Paula just had a little comment there. Do you want to pick it up in the chat?
Yeah, there's some stickies here as well. Education is centralized, and most of the times it is behind paywalls that prevents accessibility. And a relation between education and knowledge, which is a very, very important point, definitely.
Great. Yeah, so we're going to go into breakout rooms now to look at this lower section here. I might say a few words about it. So this is where things are bubbling up from underneath, and because of these big changes up here, because the new context allows for a new paradigm and challenges those foundational principles there is opportunity, this windows of opportunity for niche, new innovations to start to break into the mainstream. And we've seen some of those already, but we know there's a lot more. So this is from the paper. It's just pulling out a few of those kind of paradigm shifting, not specific things, but kind of big changes in how we might do education, for example, adaptive learning. In a world of decentralized education, systems of assessment will become much more outcome-based and diverse. I don't know if you've heard of Minerva Institute, assesses students on competencies and gives out individual grades for every comment they make in class, working to create a map of their micro contributions and capacities over the 4 years. As an example of outcomes-based, we can look at GitHub, an open source programming platform that now functions as a new resource in coding circles. Here, a developer's profile and real code contributions become their profile, their work profile. Potential employees can examine the code and run it to see the outcomes. So shifting to something that's less kind of caught up in its own metrics of success and actually more about outcomes-based. Over here, contextualized learning, right? One of those factors up there was that they're closed and centralized. Schools and universities are ideal spaces to become lifelong learning hubs for communities, businesses, and civil society to unite as communities of practice for creative innovation. The school could be a physical learning platform, providing a space where people could come together to learn. These spaces could be anywhere, in parks, museums, digital physical learning environments that turn every space and activity into a learning exchange. Coursera's learning hubs offer people around the world physical spaces where they can access the internet to take a Coursera course whilst learning alongside peers in an interactive, facilitated setting. Another example is the app Clio, which works to bring a city's history to life using mobile technology to display user-curated historical events, cultural writings, images, and personal stories of a location. So those are the ways that we can actually start to break out of, the confines of schools and so forth. And new ways of incentivizing and rewarding for education. Token economies are starting to be introduced, where we can actually have like we saw up here with the coding example, where we're actually getting our CV created as we produce that code and so forth, and we can be earning credits for that. Token economies are a way of creating tokens that we can earn when we do any kind of educational activity. Instead of just having assessment, you can actually be building up a portfolio of tokens as you go along to get a much richer profile. And learning platforms. In this platform model, we move from a world of brick and mortar institutions creating their own solutions to networks that connect modular components. To do this, we have to develop both a common network of exchange with a more ecosystem way of looking at education. As we talked about in previous interviews in this series, this idea of educational ecosystems is really key to the next generation of education. An education ecosystem can be defined as a dynamically evolving and interconnected network of educational spaces with individuals and institutional providers that offer a variety of learning experiences to individuals and collective learners across the learning life cycle. So it's no longer just the confines of one institution, but so many different organizations and different dimensions of society actually contribute to education, whether that's in recreation or in museums, in so many different dimensions, and we can create ecosystems out of those for supporting learning in a much richer way. So let's just give you a snippet of some of those, but we're going to go into breakout rooms. We have two of them here, right? One is we're going to split into two rooms. Room one is about what are the new innovations. Do you have ideas there? What else would you like to share with us? So post up there, have a discussion, and over here, how might we enable the development of those? We've got some ideas there. We'd love you to have a discussion. How long should we take? Yasmin, should we take 10 minutes? So.
Yeah, 10 minutes works. Yeah, I'm going to open the breakout rooms now.
So room one, you'll be moving over here. Room two, you'll be moving over here.
Okay. Good. Have a good discussion, everyone.
You get us back, Yasmin.
Okay, I think you're all back now.
Yeah, some good conversations there. Quite abrupt ending, but would love to hear from you. I had active conversation in group one. Would you like to share what you're up to? Michael, maybe you'd be a good candidate.
Sorry?
Would you like to share what the conversation you had?
Yeah, I don't know. I seem to get tagged here. I think,
okay.
I think
Anybody else?
no, it's fine. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. I mean, it was an interesting conversation because we weren't thinking about technologies or platforms, etc. But I think one of the innovations, in a way, is sort of a growing shift in the mindset. A way of thinking about oneself, one's value in the world. It was interesting. I'm sorry I didn't have your name. Felicity was talking about her daughter and the difficulty that she was having thinking about the future and her exams and what she was going to do next. And she was really trapped in this industrial system. She was trying to think about herself and the value of herself in the future against, massive uncertainty. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do the other? And the starting point, I think, in the conversation was, people need to make different choices about the future. That paradigm shift from education towards continuous learning, the understanding of the implications of that, the shift away from the need for external validation, in fact, questioning the validity of that external validation. And there was a quick conversation at the end, which is, is the outcome of the learning something that adds value to the learner, effectively as a product, or is it something that adds value for the learner, which asks a different question about the purpose of learning? Is it about you being productive and contributing value to somebody else for which you receive something in return? Or is it something that you do in order to add value to yourself, which connects with other people in useful ways and for which you derive a benefit? So I think, the conversation ended up being quite philosophical, but interesting. And noting no infrastructure in place to help people, between the ages of about 16 and 24, how to think about the future in a more constructive way, rather than looking down the well.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael. I think that's it's a very great way to point it. Is it for the learner or to the learner that we are creating this curriculum and portfolio?
Yeah, they brought the teaching versus learning thing up. And I totally agree with you, Mike. I think that's part of the big shift that's taking place, moving away from teaching to learning. But yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, okay. So on the group 2, quickly, so we can have some time to talk about the next section as well. Maybe I think, John, if you don't mind just sharing some main points that you've discussed in your room. You're on mute. Yes.
Yeah, it was interesting. We started out looking at the niches that are at play within a given system. So, and I'm in the United States, so I talked about, well, we have school boards, we have government agencies, we have the federal government, all telling us what education needs to be. And then we also have industry, I'll say businesses doing that. And towards the end, I brought up the concept of how AI is going to change the way in which we think about these different niches. And then we have parent niches, that are there. And so in the United States, the politics have really influenced the way in which we look at schools, not so much towards change, but how do we ban books? How do we ban certain types of kids in school, et cetera? So that, you know, how might we enable the niches is that we have to find a way of beginning to have conversation to try to understand how these different niches are interacting with each other, because the complexity of the environments in which we are working in are so ambiguous, and that the change process becomes difficult because the other thing is everyone in these niches are a product of the present system. And so there's a discussion about, in the United States, about 90% of the schools are the same old, and there's only about 10% of them that are, you know, trying to break out of that framework of the present K-12 environment.
Yeah, so the current regime, as we see, it's just very, very strong, right? So breaking out of this system and this way of doing things is just it's very difficult. But yeah, AI has some potentials there, as you said. So interesting to see how the future can look like. So yeah, we can thank you everyone for participating, and we can move to the next part now, the last part of the event today.
Sorry, just having little issues. There we go. So here we are. We've just got 10 minutes or so left. So we're going to go to breakout rooms again, actually. We might run over time because we started a little bit late. Maybe we'll go 5 minutes over time. Hopefully you'll be able to stay with us. We've got 2 breakout rooms here, and this is the meta level where we're talking about, we have the incumbents here, we have these landscape changes that are going to create new opportunities, and we have these niche innovations here bubbling up. But how might this actual disruption play out? How might they actually break into the mainstream? And that's the question there. Do we see those already? That's room 1 if you want to join there. And then if and when they manage to do so, what might this new system look like? Over here, you can see some little quotes going on here that are illustrators of different people's opinions about what that might look like. But for the sake of time, maybe we get these breakout rooms and jump into that as well.
Sure. Sorry, everyone. I think it was very abrupt again, but I hope you had a good discussion in your rooms. And yeah, I would like to know briefly some ideas that popped out from your discussion. So you can start with room 1. Maybe Michael again. You're on mute, Michael. Yeah, just very quickly, so we have time for the other group as well.
Sure. And I think, you know, the key thing was really about the innovation will not go head on with the current system. because of that huge inertia, because of those investors' interests. The question is really about how we can change the dynamics of the conversation, how we can create the space to raise fundamental questions about the validity of the model and the need for change. I think what the most important thing is in that shift is about the value of the individual. How can we're saying that it is possible through digital means and digital accreditation, etc., to understand and appreciate an individual more deeply and more fully and more easily, and to connect individuals with value opportunities, whatever those might be, whether that's a job or whether that's an opportunity to connect with people on projects with a shared purpose. And so I would think that is really the way, and the desirability of doing that, and the momentum towards that by individuals. I would say that's the key piece here.
Great. Yeah, going back to considering ourselves, right, and the human part of all that before, curriculum and other things that we normally put in front of us. Great, thank you, Michael.
And the essence of learning, I think Paco was raising that, or no, Ali was raising that in this room about it's not just a conceptual thing, like there's a person behind that, and it comes with kind of emotions, and you're creating a person through learning. So maybe someone from this room, Ali or Julie, would you like to share something? Julia?
Yep, sure, happy to. I think I don't know that there was much we were just churning out ideas and sticking up our stickies and our ideas, but I think there was certainly talk around one of the last things that came up was community, connecting it to the community to try and make it real. And I very much like the point, we didn't discuss it, but I like the point about sustainability. I'm in the sustainability sector, and I feel that there should be a far stronger incorporation of that into new paradigms of education. So looking at what the world needs, what kind of roles does the world need, and we should be also preparing young learners for that kind of a world, the world that's ahead of us, which I think is going to be quite challenging. Personally, again, one of my points was looking at some of the softer skills as well, and emotional intelligence. I do think that's what the world's missing at the moment, and I do think there are some ways of introducing that into education along with the formal knowledge-based systems. I don't know if some of our other group members want to jump in with more of their ideas. John, I know you've always got a lot to say.
Well, I think because of the time, we can maybe have continue this discussion another time. And I think of something very important that you mentioned about the soft skills. I think it's Simon Sinek that says that we should step away from calling those soft skills and start calling them human skills, right? Because they are not less, or soft, seems very, I don't know, flexible, things that you can adjust, but not really. We should be putting them as a priority, as well as the hard skills, right? So thank you very much for this discussion. And
we'll have the board here afterwards. You can join again on the link, and you can look through all of what's here, and as mentioned, it's in the paper up here. You'll find the links. So thanks a lot for joining, everyone, and co-creating this. There's a little section here for feedback if you have any of that. A couple of questions. You can drag a sticky up here like this, and then to either side, and you can also click on it to type in some text, and the feedback that way would be greatly appreciated. And great to have you here again, and I hope to see you again in a future event. We will wrap up for now.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And take care. See you. Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.